Alright guys, so today we are working on a really cool title animation sequence, which is going to be used for things like YouTube intros, any type of really cool text transitions or animations, stuff that you guys would see in movie trailers or anything like that. It's going to be something that's really fun and productive that I know that you guys are going to love doing one day on your own. It's going to be for your own channels, for your own content creation in the future. And I really want you guys to do your absolute best on this project because it could be something that helps determine your attention that you drag as a content creator and people that you attract because like, oh wow, like I love that intro, it's awesome. And nothing would be incomplete without a good intro song. And a good intro song is one that I actually have on my computer right now. I'll open up Finder right here and I downloaded this one. I'll use this one in Premiere Pro to kind of time up the beat of everything. But right about here, click on this one. Judging the quality of the song is what's going to really help it out. So right about here, as soon as the audio or the dialogue kind of like fades out a little bit and then the instrumental picks up, this is where I want to start it. So let's go back a little bit. So about 12 seconds is where it started. I noted it right here. So about 30 seconds. So from 12 seconds to 30 seconds, which if we do that math, it's 18 seconds long. So let's shoot for an 18-second long introduction, okay? So we can trim up the song a little bit later when we want to start things, but first we're actually going to build the text, and then we're going to think about like adding the music a little bit later. But let's go ahead and put that in right now. So let's open up After Effects, guys. All right, After Effects is open. Let's create a new project up on the top left here. Now that we have this, everybody, let's click on New Composition, and let's name our composition YouTube Intro. All right, and let's say 1920 by 1080. This preset's pretty solid, so we want to be 1080 pixels by 29.97, and we said 18 seconds. So let's go down here to duration. Let's click on this and let's set it to 18 seconds, and let's do like probably a half a second. And if we're doing 30 frames per second, change that back to 29.97. There we go. If we want to do 18 seconds long, that's not too bad, but let's make it 18 and a half. So half a second would be how many frames if there's 30? 15. So if there's 30 frames in 1 second, because it's 30 frames per second, half of 1 second is 15 frames. So 18 seconds and 15 frames is what I'm going to go for. All right, everything looks okay. Let's click OK. Now we want to save this After Effects project, so let's go ahead and go up to File and Save As. And then I'm going to put it on my drive, which I'll put on my drive right here. And then I'm going to go to Class Tutorials. Then I want to go down to, I'll make another folder, but let's go ahead and name the project. We'll call it YouTube Intro. Go. We'll save that. All right, so it's saved. And now I want to start importing my sources. So I've created the composition. I've saved it where it's going to be. It's going to be on my drive. And let's actually start the song off, if you will. Let's add the song in there, and then we'll build the graphics around the music, okay? So let's press Command-I on our keyboard, or Control-I for our Microsoft users out there. On my drive here, I should see in the class tutorials, there it is, God level right there. God level, yeah. It's a really cool looking, or cool sounding song, I'd say. So if I wanted to bring the music down here, I've just imported it. Let's drag it onto our timeline. We'll make that our base. That's the beginning that I want to start off with. Let me actually delete this real quick. Alright, now that I've imported my song, guys, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to double click this, and I'm going to basically select the individual frames of what I want to just pull out, because we said that 18-second long bit. We don't want to drag like an entire song or an entire video onto here and import it. We just want to take what we need, because that's just more data that After Effects has to render and process in order to work. So let's double click on the song that we picked, and then it's going to open up the footage layer, and that's something that we're going to end up playing this. It's giving us the time duration right here. So right about there, if I narrow it down to an, if I zoomed in by pressing the plus button on the top right of my keyboard, I'm going to listen for the exact moment for when I want to cut to trim this out. All right, looks like it's about start. If you want to go straight to 12 seconds, you can just go here, double click on the time code, and then it's just going to take you there. So on this timeline marker right here, where I just kind of zoomed out and stretched it, I'm going to click, that's my start point. And then let's go 18 seconds ahead. 18 seconds and 5 frames of this, because that's the length of the composition that we have. And the out point, if we go, oh no, sorry, my bad, right here. If we go to that out point right here, guys, when you can go to the specific time duration, 18 seconds and 15 frames ahead of 12 seconds exactly is 30 seconds and 15 frames right there. So now, if I zoom all the way out, you'll see that it's jumped ahead that exact time to where it's 30 seconds and 15 frames. Now, I already set my in point right here, which is why the rest of this is grayed out in the beginning. But if I want to set my out point and just say, okay, I just want whatever I made right here to go onto my duration, or to go on my timeline, then I set my out point, since I already put the ending time right here. And it's the exact time that's going to fit on this composition. So now we press the out point right here, where our timeline marker is, and boom. Now what After Effects is going to do is, if I take this and drag it onto my timeline, it's not going to render like the whole song. It's not going to have so much data to process. So to literally take this audio that we just crafted and trim down to what we need, we're going to click on this button to the far right, right above Edit Target YouTube Intro. This button right here says Overlay Edit, and then it's basically going to take what we just cut and put it down here. There we go. And now it's exactly what we need. There we go. All right, and then it's just processing and using the part that we put in there. So next, we're going to look at adding some titles and layers, but first we need to add a background. So now that we have the duration there, we've got the music that we want to use, we're going to start building some more layers. And the first layer that we're going to develop is a solid layer, okay? So we can either right click down here and click new and then click new solid, or you guys can go up to layer and then new solid. It doesn't matter. Let's actually go up here to layer, new, and then new solid. So now we're creating a new solid layer. All right. Want to make sure that it's the exact same size as our definition that we have right here, 1920 by 1080. That looks good. And if we put this right here, let's actually make this kind of smoky. So I'll show you how to do like some smoke and mist today. So let's label this smoke. And if we wanted to help kind of color coordinate everything, let's just make this a red color. And what I mean by red is that the little box that you have right here to keep track of what you guys are editing and creating, you can customize the color of this little square box. And it's like, oh yeah, this is the smoke one that I was working on. Now we want to go ahead and click OK, and now it's creating that. All right, scratch 5. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and add just a new layer. All right, we're going to add a new solid layer to our composition. This solid layer is going to be our smoke. Okay, so we're going to go up here to the top left. We're going to click on layer and then new solid. Okay. Now, first, before we do any of this, we're just going to make sure that this color is the same. Like, we can determine the color for our composition, but right here it's 1920 by 1080, and let's make this smoke. Let's call it smoke. All right, smoke. Everything looks okay. Let's go ahead and add this guy. All right. Now our smoke layer is on top of our God level layer. All right, this is the color that we chose. It's the same exact dimensions. The pixels are fine. Now that we've added that, we're going to go ahead and go down to where we see effect, and then when we add effects to the smoke layer, we're going to click on effect and we're going to actually add the smoke. So we'll go up to effect. Since we're highlighted on the smoke layer right here, you have to make sure you're highlighted. Go to effect, and then you want to go down to where it says noise and grain, and then you want to select fractal noise. Okay. Once we add fractal noise in there, it's going to add the smoke and the mist to our composition, or it's going to add it to the smoke layer. Okay. So now that we've added that, one thing that we're going to pay attention to as well is that on the left hand side in our project window, even though we can see our solid layer that we added right here and the God level MP3, so the music that we use, let's go ahead and go to effect controls. If we go to effect controls, now we can start customizing and changing up the smoke in our composition like this. So the next thing we want to do is that we want to go down to transform, and transform is over here on the far left hand side, where we can basically, instead of having these little spurts or like this looks more kind of like fluffy carpeting and like really thick kind of grainy sandy matter rather than like smoke. So let's actually kind of zoom in a little bit, and in order to do that, we'll go to transform on the left hand side where our fractal noise effect control is, and then we'll go down to where it says scale, and we'll take it up to maybe like right about like almost like 239, something like that. You can click and hold with your fingers, or you can click and hold with your mouse, and if you left click and hold it to the right or to the left, you can zoom in and zoom out as you're adjusting this value. These blue numbers that you guys see, it will literally change and alter everything that you see just by doing that, instead of having to double click and put in a specific value. Or you can use the little knob that they have right here. So I'm going to go ahead and go with this. Once I have that scale in there, guys, we're gonna go ahead and go down to and just to make it even, I'm gonna put it at like 300. Yeah, it looks a little bit more smoky. Kind of like that. Now that we've got like a pretty solid, like even number. So now that we've got our smoke up and running, guys, we actually want the smoke to kind of move around a little bit. So there's already a way that we can do this with an evolution effect in transform. And to get the smoke to kind of move around a little bit like mist, if you will, instead of just standing still like this, we're going to be doing something really, really cool where we're basically going to give a command for After Effects to continuously loop something, okay? So in order to achieve that, if you guys are using Mac right now, if you're using your MacBooks or any type of Apple computer, you're going to hold down on Option, and when you guys hold down on Option, you're going to keep holding down on Option on your keyboard and click the timestamp or the stopwatch for your keyframes next to Evolution. What that's going to do is that's going to allow you guys to basically input a command right here where it's going to start looping and changing around, and you're basically going to see this dial, or you're going to see the smoke and the mist move around. So when you have this, you want to highlight all the commands that you see right here, and then you want to put time, T-I-M-E, and then you want to hold down Shift and press the 8 key to get this little star and this asterisk. So time asterisk 200. When you have that, click enter and you should be good. Now watch the command as the smoke moves around. Ready? So now the smoke is starting to move around. Looks kind of misty and kind of interesting. It basically kind of loops keyframes for you, and it creates that evolution where it just instead of individually creating like keyframes, like, you know, left and right, okay, you change here, you change here, you change here. This is basically a command that allows you guys to create something that randomizes movement and makes it look a little bit more mystical. All right, now that we have that, the next step that we're going to be doing is we're going to go to the brightness and the contrast that we have for our smoke, and we're going to make it a little bit more misty and less kind of patchy, okay? So at the top left right here, we're going to go to our effect controls and we're going to adjust the brightness and the contrast, okay? So for the brightness, that's okay where it is. I'm going to leave it at 0. I'm going to leave the brightness at 0. So double click here, click that. But the contrast, however, I kind of want it to be a little bit more smoky and less grainy. And we're probably going to put that to, let's say, I'd probably say, honestly, 40. Yeah, let's bring this down to 40. So I'm going to decrease that contrast. And you know what? Actually, to make the background a little bit cooler, let's bring it down to -45. Yeah, there we go. So what that did, guys, instead of having all this gray and this whitewashed smoke behind us, we now have some like dark black background with at least a little bit of mist moving around. So now that we have that, the next step that we're going to use and implement is that we can see that basically, like we said, we see the smoke moving around. It looks pretty sweet. Yeah, that's nice. All right, we're actually going to create a new solid layer, guys. And the new solid layer that we're actually going to make, since we're going back up to the top again, is we're going to basically create a light source. The light source that we're going to make is going to be on a new layer. So I'm going to decompress this by pressing the drop down arrow on the bottom left of our smoke layer, just to kind of keep it a little bit organized. Now let's add another image layer right here. solid layer. We'll call it light 1. And the color that we're going to give it is probably more of like a blue light. We're basically going to make a shape, guys. No, we're going to make a solid that's like a shape, and we're going to make it look like it's a light source. And then we'll go into like artificial light as well. And doing this, you want to go down to color. Let's make a red and a blue light, okay? So I'll make this one, let's make a blue light first. All right, and then I'll drag this up to where it's blue, and then I'm going to drag this ball that we see up to where it's more blue. We can have it there, we can make it a little bit lighter. I think I like it right here. And now I want to click OK. All right. So now that I've already made this blue light image layer, this solid layer that I'm creating, guys, we're going to go ahead and draw an elliptical mask that I just showed you. So over here, we click and hold, and we'll find the ellipses tool that we want. That's the ellipses tool we want to make. And when we go down here, we can actually probably start in this little section and then click and hold with our mouse and try to center up this pretty decent sized mask just like that. Because if it's in the middle of our solid layer that we just made, then that allows us a little bit more flexibility than if we put it in the corner somewhere. All right, you'll see what I'm talking about. So from here, we're going to add this mask, and we're going to go back to our composition. And this composition that we just made, everybody, is pretty decent. We're creating some blue light right about now, and once I've added this, a nice little rule of thumb that I like to do is that you want to make sure that the little crosshairs in the middle whenever you guys are creating masks. And the reason why, like I said, is that if you get in the middle, then you have the room of the other box around you. So from here, we're going to create this mask, and we're going to drag it up to the top right. This will be like our light source coming from this corner, okay? Now that we have this mask right here, we're going to go down to the bottom left, and we're going to go down to mask 1, which is the one that we just made, and we'll look at mask feather, and we'll turn that up to probably, the more that you increase this mask feather, the softer it gets, and the more it looks like a really interesting looking light source. And I'm seeing some stuff right about there. Let's do like 503, and let's expand this mask. There we go. So once we've created this right here, guys, that's a pretty good blue light source that we have. Now we want to go ahead and make a red one. I like where this is placed. Now, to save you guys some time, if you already made like an image layer and you just kind of want to replicate this but change one thing about it, which is what we're going to do, an easy way that you guys can do it is by literally clicking and highlighting the layer that you want to basically clone or copy, and just pressing Command D on your on your keyboard, or you can press Control D if you guys are using Microsoft or Windows. Now, what that has is that's created an additional layer that's the exact same one. It's blue, but I kind of want to change it up a little bit. So instead of being in this corner over here, I'm going to pull it down to this corner right here. All right, now that we've added that duplicate light source that we have, guys, it's going to be, I want to make this one red instead of blue. So in order to change this layer, we're going to go down to the bottom left, make sure that light 2 is highlighted. We renamed this to light 2. You can right click it and rename it. I mean, it's already light 1, so that's fine where it is. Light 2, however, this guy, we need to have this clicked and highlighted on so that we'll go up here to layer, and then from layer we'll go to solid settings, and then from here we can actually change the color from blue to red. So let's bring it up all the way right here. Let's bring this color to red. We can actually see it's actually kind of changing quite a bit. And if we do like instead of like a completely obvious red like that, like a little vibrant, like something a little bit softer, maybe right there, just on the opposite side of the spectrum. And yeah, right there, everybody, we have basically 2 light sources. That one's cut off there, that one's cut off there. Let's try to mimic the same thing. A little bit there, a little bit there. There we go. Yep, looks pretty solid right there. The solid looks solid. So, once we've changed that setting on it, we've made it red, guys. Like, these are our light sources that we are contrasting our text with, and behind we got the smoke going on. And yeah, it's basically something that we can play around with. We can adjust the opacities. We can make it look a little bit less intense or less obvious. I like the symmetry that it offers, but to basically make it look a little bit more like a light source coming in from somewhere, let's adjust the opacity on it, okay? So in order to do that, let's go ahead and go down to the bottom left, click our drop downs. Don't need to focus on our masks, but we can go to our transform options on the bottom left for light 2 and light 1. I color coded these red and blue, but they should show you the picture or what is contained inside of these images right here. And then for opacity, guys, let's bring it down to like something like 80%, something like that. Yeah, 80% on there and 80% on here. And yeah, those look a little bit more natural, kind of like light sources, if you will, instead of just these, you know, random. There we go. I'm going to move this down to the corner just a little bit. That blue looks fine. There we go. Now that we've got that, and the next thing that we want to add is text to our composition. So we're going to press Command on our Max and T, or you can press Control T. And just through here, guys, if you click in the middle, it's going to add that text for us. It's going to be another text layer that we're creating right now. So let's say YouTube intro. But instead of doing that, I'm going to make 2 separate text layers. So let's just do YouTube for right now. And we can look at the character panels over here on the far right hand side. And this allows us to customize our lettering. Through here, I'm going to go ahead and go with one of the stock options that we have. And that would probably be something that's a little bit more bold. I would probably go with probably Helvetica Neue, something like that. Condensed bold. You can do condensed black, ultralight. That's super thin. Regular looks like that, but let's do condensed. I'm gonna do condensed. I'm gonna do condensed bold. And then you guys can increase and decrease the size of the text. You can adjust how tall and skinny it is. Let's bring this to like maybe 100. And you can adjust the placement of it like that if you wanted to inside of the text box. And you can adjust like the separation, how it stretches from left to right. Let's do something like that. You can make it italicized. You can make it all caps. I'm going to leave it the way it is. And from there, I think I like the way everything looks. If I wanted to add a stroke color. I made my stroke color white, so it's basically looking okay the way it is right now. Let's make this yellow. Let's turn this smoke sandstone, dark green, something like that. All right. Now, all right, 3, 2. Now that we have our YouTube text right here, guys, we can go ahead and let's go ahead and press V on our keyboards and use the selection tool again, basically. So after we've adjusted and changed that, I'm going to basically like look at the size of my text here. I want to make it a little bit bigger. Oh, go back to the composition. Make it a little bit bigger. So I basically, what I did, guys, was that I just simply I simply clicked on the text layer down here because I want to change it and increase the size of it. So I'm gonna make it look about, let's say that big, so 206. And then in order to make this centered, because it's not perfectly centered, we're going to go to the align panel right above the character panel. So click on that and align horizontally. So that's going to make it even between left and right. And then if we align vertically, it'll make it even between top and bottom. Okay. So this is left, this is right. That's align top, align bottom. But to perfectly center what you're trying to do, then that's what you guys need to do. That's what you guys need to do. So we can do YouTube, but I'm going to do YouTube in the intro. Okay. So in order to do this, I'm going to have YouTube placed a little bit above. So I'm going to go ahead and select V, and I'm going to drag this guy probably right at that height. And I'm not going to center him between top and bottom. I'm just going to center him between left and right. And there we go. Now he's perfectly centered. So once we've created that, like we said, we already aligned it. And doing the text, we're going to basically create, we're going to be able to track this text. And this is where some cool motion tracking comes in play. So on the bottom left, we're going to go down to YouTube, and we're going to highlight this and click this drop down menu. Okay, this drop down button is going to go here, and then we'll see a little button that says animate. Okay, so right here from YouTube, we're going to see animate down here on the bottom left. When we click on that, we're going to go down to where it says tracking. And then when you click on tracking, you're going to allow it to start doing keyframes. And you're going to pick an endpoint where you want it to finish, and you're going to select the starting point at a different point. So for example, I'm going to have this basically kind of stretch away and then stretch back. So I'm going to drag this down all the way down to the end. Somewhere right about there though. Right about there. And I'm going to activate these keyframes that I have right here. Tracking amount down here in the bottom left. And we're going to go back here to about the beginning, and we're going to go down to the 0 value that we see next to our tracking amount on the bottom left, and you're going to increase that. So that's something that we're going to increase, because what that's doing is that's basically, it's keeping track of the word, but it's stretching it out a little bit. So I'll stretch it out to probably right about maybe there. But it's going to decompress over time. See? Now we just need to rotate it and add a little depth to it. And that's the fun part coming up in a second. Now, one way that we can do this is that in order to basically make it, instead of just go from straight here to right there, I mean, it looks good and nice and everything, but we want to make sure that we ease in and ease out of our keyframes, guys. How we can accomplish that is by simply, we can click on the graph editor right here. So if we click on the graph editor and we see how this keyframe adjusts, it just kind of goes straight down. We can literally see the graph itself, and then we can click on Easy Ease. And then when we have that, it's a gradual compression. It starts off kind of flat, and then it just starts to come in a little bit more. Yep, so that's just the beginning phases that we have right here. So now, if we kind of want to adjust this smoothing or the easing in and easing out, one thing that we can do is that we can right click on this, and we can click and check off where it says edit speed graph. If you don't have this checked, you won't be able to pull this off. So let's highlight and click on edit speed graph. From there, we can see, like, wait a minute, like, I can adjust and change this point myself. It's like, yeah, you can. Or you can change it a lot like this. What I'm showing you guys right here is simply something that we're adjusting the ending point of this keyframe. I'm going to bring this one up right here. And so what I'm doing is that it's coming back to where it needs to be. So let's watch it again. Slowly coming in. And then it actually speeds up a little bit as it gets closer. That's pretty sweet. Or we can ramp it a little bit and change it to where basically, if you guys want, you can bring this guy back here, and you can bring this little yellow dot back there. See how it smoothly and eases into where it's supposed to be? Just slowly adjusts over time right there, but it's nice and smooth. there. Maybe that might be a little long. Looks pretty smooth, right? Yeah, looks nice. The way that we do this is by adjusting these little yellow dots that we see right here, guys. These are handles that we attach to our keyframes to help kind of correlate where we want that shift. So watch this. Kind of smoothly and eases in right there. Or if we adjust it a little bit more to the right, let's see this peak. It'll slowly and then rapidly and then slowly go back in. Maybe we want something that looks like that. I'm going to stick with this for right now. And I'm going to compress this. There we go. And I'm going to compress this from here to here. I didn't extend it because the longer you give it, the slower it kind of comes together. And I want it to come together like pretty decently like this. There we go. It's important you guys have that ramp first because then it kind of quickly comes together and for a little bit and then it slows into each other. Just like that. Now, one thing that we can help and add to the 3D effect of just like this 2D text that we have here, if we want to make this like kind of like a metal block or a metal bar, we can go down to the bottom left. And we want to highlight. We want to click and highlight, and then we want to right click our text that we have for YouTube. And then if we go down to where it says layer styles, we're going to go to layer styles, and then we're going to go to gradient overlay. All right, now that we've added this little gradient overlay on our text, guys, we're going to go down to colors on the bottom left. So it's a drop down that we have to click for gradient overlay, and then we go down to colors and then click edit gradient, okay? Now from here, everybody, we're going to basically make this all white a little bit around the edges, the top and the bottom. So click on color stop, and then we're going to drag our little oval all the way to the top where the white is. Now we've made it pretty even and pretty nice. But if we hover just below the color bar that we see right here, we'll have our hand develop, and it says click to add a stop. We're going to add a color stop right about there. Yeah, we kind of want to add it in like basically the middle right here, so we'll click and hold and drag this. Once we add that color stop, what you're doing is that you're basically making another color form in the middle. And what we're doing with this color stop is that we're essentially taking it and making it to where there's a little bit of a shine and a hue that comes with it. So I'm going to drag it down to about right maybe there. Looks kind of metallic this way. And from there, since we have our silver selected, basically, we're going to help minimize at least a little bit of the glare and the drop off, and take these color midpoints that we see right here and bring them closer to the stop that we just added. So, well, I didn't want to do that. That's not what I wanted. We'll go back to edit gradients. There we go. You have to click on this guy, and then you have to bring these midpoints back to him. To keep on clicking it. There we go. Looks a little bit more consistent. And I'd say that YouTube looks kind of metallic, wouldn't you? I think that looks pretty decent. And so now that we have that, guys, I like the way that this looks, but we're going to apply basically the same effect and the same principle to this that we did with the solid layer behind it, and we're going to click and highlight our YouTube text layer, and we're going to press Command and then D on our keyboard. And what we just did is we essentially made a duplicate YouTube thing. And what we're going to do now is that, if we go over here to our composition, we'll bring it down and say, oh yeah, that's right, like I did make a second one, I did clone this. And let's go ahead and rename this. I'm going to rename it Intro. I right clicked and I renamed it Intro. And let's also change this up a little bit. INTR. There we go. But yeah, it looks pretty solid right there so far, and we're not done just quite yet, everybody. All right, now guys, what we're gonna do is that now that we've copied this, now that we've made it into some, oh my goodness. We're going to actually change this text a little bit more. If we go over here, it says set the tracking for the select characters. Let's do -20 here. I'm going to go ahead. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the selection tool here at the top left, and I'm going to select my intro right here, and I'm going to align it kind of horizontally again in the middle. I want it to kind of be right about maybe there, and then my YouTube to be right about there. If that makes any sense? There we go. And then from there, I need to center both of them again. You center, you center. There we go. I think that looks pretty decent. There we go. And now that we've done that, we also see that the same keyframes were attached to intro as they were on YouTube. Okay, so that looks great. We didn't have to do those keyframes all over again. All right, guys. Now, in order to actually make this, these texts look a little bit 3D, I'm going to go ahead and just bring this back up a little bit. Let's change some of these colors, whatnot, guys, to, let's do like aqua there. Let's start with YouTube, okay? For the YouTube word, I selected this solid layer that we have right here. So even though I just duplicated it to make it into intro right here, we need to basically create another thing right behind YouTube. So another text behind YouTube that also says YouTube. And what that is that it's going to help give this 2D text its three-dimensional space, okay? So it already looks kind of metallic right here. But in order for it to kind of pop out at us, we need to basically duplicate it one more time. So click and highlight it, Command D, YouTube 2, and then we can do the same thing for intro, Command D, intro 2. Let's put this on top and that on top right there. So let's make sure that the 2's behind the original text are actually behind it and not in front, okay? So through here on the text that is behind it, we're going to basically do the same thing that we did with the original text in front. So click the drop down menu, go down to transform, not transform, we're going to go down to layer styles, my bad. Layer styles, so click on that drop down, then go down to gradient overlay, and we're going to go ahead and select more colors. So we're going to click edit gradient, and this, remember, this is for YouTube 2, not for YouTube 1 or just regular YouTube. You want to create that oh, hold on a second. Oh yeah, the other step that we forgot. When it comes to doing YouTube 2 and YouTube 1 for character, intro 2, YouTube, no, we'll keep this, make sure we keep that at 0 right there. So over here on the far right hand side, make sure on your regular YouTube 1 it's at 0. But on your second one, guys, it's going to be off to the center a little bit, so make sure it's at -20 on the right, on over here, when it comes to set the tracking. So it's at -20. So it's kind of layered that we see right here. It's a little bit, it comes off to the left, and it's a little bit thicker. If we made it 0, it'd be directly behind it. Now, so I made it -20 over here on YouTube too. And then when you scroll down, you'll see edit gradient underneath gradient overlay and colors. When we pick that up, guys, the next one that we're going to be doing is that we're basically going to be creating an all gray with a little bit of white in the middle. So check this out, ready? So essentially the reverse of what we did for the top YouTube text. We're going to take this and we're going to make this white. Even then you can kind of notice its 3D look right there. And then on the sides though, we're going to make these a little bit more gray. Oh, look at that. Pretty sweet. There we go. So now this text is popping us out by using two 2D letters. And then the same thing is what we're going to be doing for intro 2. Okay, so I'm going to decompress this, go to intro 2, click on this, make sure it's highlighted, go to our tracking, and we're going to type in -20. It's going to be a little bit thicker right here. Click the drop down where we see intro 2 on the bottom left hand side. Go down to layer styles, gradient overlay, edit gradient, and we're basically going to flip this. So we're going to take this middle piece first, click on that one, and then we're going to click here and go drag it all the way up to the top right to where it's white. Go to this color stop right here, drag it down to where it's kind of gray, and do the exact same thing over here. Drag this down to where it's pretty gray. Make sure it's kind of even a little bit. And then boom, intro right here. It's popping out. We've got 3D looking text, guys, just by using two-dimensional shapes. It's just using gradient overlays. Now it's popping out at us. And we also still have those animated keyframes for where it kind of stretches in or compresses in. So everything's looking good so far right now, everybody. Now, something that we also have to make sure of as well is that to make sure that it stays attached to the lettering that it's going to, we're going to have to make sure that the background text follows the first text. So we're going to use parents and links, okay? So through here, everybody, we're going to go to the drop down for intro. Click the drop down for that one, and then the drop down for intro 2. We can bring this one back up, make it a little bit neater. There we go. So we should see intro and intro 2, okay? So for text, you want to click the drop down for text underneath intro 2 and the drop down for text underneath intro. So we'll see source text. On the far right hand side, we'll see a little squiggly key, okay? This that we're going to go down for intro 2 is what's going to follow basically what we see, like it needs to follow this. So you guys are going to click and hold this up. You're going to click and hold this. Hold on. You guys are going to click and hold this squiggly line, which is basically you're going to give it an inherent value or a parent and a link. So we're going to take it and we're going to link it to this source text right above. I think it's this one. It should be, yeah, it should be that source text keyframe right here. So we'll click and hold this squiggly key and it should go right there. Guys, basically should be doing the same thing when it comes to YouTube 1 and YouTube 2. So let's try to implement that. Click this drop down, there we go. YouTube 2. Let's decompress this a little bit. Text, there we go. Drag this little squiggly key next to source text where YouTube 2 is. We're going to decide its parent, which is YouTube 1 right here. There we go. Now let's check this out. It's basically putting in commands and saying, okay, you want to follow basically that right there. It's not too bad so far. If I had to stretch up, see, that's what happens. Yeah, we'll keep it where it is right there. Actually, we can increase it right here. So I'm going to go to the far right hand side where my character panel is, everybody, and I'm going to increase the horizontal scale a little bit. That's for, my bad, that's for YouTube 2. Let's make it YouTube 1. There we go. So let's make it a little bit wider. Let's say 106%. So that's 106. Let's go down to YouTube 2. Let's make this 106. That looks a little bit better. There we go. Align. We're still doing good. Still looking good. Yeah, there we go. Just follows it naturally. That's gonna be clean. All right. So now that we've tackled that, everybody, the next thing that we're going to develop is basically work on rotation and moving the text in three-dimensional space. Okay? In order to tackle that, first we could actually probably add some particles in there as well. All right, the next thing that we're going to do to take our game to the next step, everybody, is kind of introducing some particles. So particles are basically like fire, wind, water, anything like that that's sort of elemental, that kind of floats around and makes it look a little bit cooler. We'll have that, and then we'll also include like a little lens flare. So I'm going to go ahead and import that, guys. So through here, went to the top left, instead of Effect Controls, I went to my project window. Let's press Command I or Control I on Microsoft. And let's go ahead and get these particles that we got. No, it should be in downloads that I had it. There we go. That should work. Basically like fiery ash that we got right there. That's really going to add to the effect and the impact that we'll have for adding to like basically the epic and the awesomeness that we have here. So just to kind of clean it up and make it a little bit more organized, I'm going to go back to my composition. And let's bring our particles in, which is kind of like the ash that we have. So through here, kind of want it to take up the whole composition, and it's going to be in front, but basically what we got to do is that we got to take the layer that we just added on top and right click it, and then through here we're going to go from blending mode, and we're going to go from blending mode, instead of add, guys, we're just going to go screen. And then when it goes to screen, we can see that it's now been added on top of like the rest of our screen. It just blends in with everything really nicely. Has this very epic, awesome, like great look to it. Alright guys, now that we have reached the point where we've made our text look 3D, it's animated with keyframes, nice ease in and ease out with like a really good smooth transition right here. And to go basically forward into the next phase, first of all, you want to make sure that the ashes particle that you download, guys, is the same. It's the same layer that you're going to add and bring on to your timeline. So I had to do ashes 1, ashes 2, and then ashes. I'm going to do ashes 3 because this video and the asset that I send to you guys is not as long as 18 seconds. So we're going to have to basically do it multiple times. So let's bring this one down here for ashes 3. Rename that, right click, rename it to ashes 3. And then drag that guy all the way over here to the right. There we go. So the ashes are just a continuous loop that happened the entire time. But remember, in order for it to blend in with the rest of what our composition is, as I go over here to the right hand side, we see that it's completely black now. And it's just the particles, it's just the ash that we used. Remember, you have to go here, guys, right click it, and then go to where it says blending mode, and then go to screen. And then it adds it on to the rest of the composition that we have, guys. Okay? So next thing that we're going to be doing and working on is basically perfecting the 3D look and using 3D cameras in our composition. So that's going to be the next part, because we want it to we basically want to give the look that it's kind of like it sort of zooms in. It does like a really cool, awesome looking transition. All of this you guys can do with After Effects. And we'll get like the lens flare in there as well. It's going to look all right. And so in order to do, basically to use the cameras that we're going to be doing, guys, so in order to get into the 3D functions that we have with After Effects and realizing like how we can kind of fly around, you guys have seen that before in your questions. In order to do that, we're going to have to go up here to the top, and we're going to go to Layer, and then from Layer we're going to go down to New, and then New Camera. Alright, so when we add a camera, this is a camera that allows us to give us the point of view inside our After Effects composition. And we can name this camera 1, or we can just put this as camera or cam, however you want to say it. And the preset's usually like 50 millimeters, but let's bring this to a 35 millimeter preset right here. And checking all the settings and just seeing what the camera looks like, that should be just fine. Once we have that, we're going to go ahead and click OK. And once we have that, guys, all of our assets that we have for the rest of the composition, we're going to click and hold in this little empty space on the bottom left down here. We're going to click and hold, and we're going to drag, and we're going to highlight everything underneath the camera. All right? Once we have all of that highlighted, guys, we're going to click on Toggle Switches and Nodes. We can see the differences in the symbols right here versus the words. But we're going to go back to the symbols right here. Okay? So we'll see the symbols, and every single one, guys, we're going to make three-dimensional. This says right here, 3D layer, allow this layer to be manipulated in 3 dimensions. And that is where we're going to use everything that we see right here, because since we highlighted all of it, everything that you guys see that just pops up right here in the composition, we can now see and access and use that 3-dimensionally. Okay? Now, in order to help give you guys at least a better perspective of everything, we're going to click off this. We're going to go up to our composition, and you guys are going to see basically the number of views that you can get from all of this, which would be the right hand side right here. You'll see select view layout, and when you click on one view, let's go to 4 views. So what this is and how this might seem a little confusing, but if you think about it this way, it's almost like we're looking at a cube. That is where our that's where our composition lies. This is the front of our cube. This is the camera that we're looking at. We're looking at the front. This is the top of our cube. This little thin line that you see right here is our actual composition. This is the right side of our cube. This thin line right here is us looking at our composition. And that's the front. That's the right. This is the top. Notice how the Y is not pointing up or down. It's just, it's pointing straight down, but we're looking down on the Y. And the X is moving to the right and to the left. So it helps to kind of at least view it like this, because I think it gives you guys at least a better example. Now that we have that, the thing that we want to do is that we want to basically make sure that the smoke follows the rest of our composition. And in order to basically start, we're going to go down here and we're going to click and highlight smoke. And when we click and highlight smoke, we can see that it's going to be manipulated and changed throughout the rest of our composition. All right. If we click on the drop down next to smoke, we can find that there's effects, transform, material options. Let's go down to transform. Okay. Then for transform, we can adjust the position. A quicker way to do this, if you wanted to, guys, would basically be to press P as soon as you click on smoke. Or if we can just follow the way that I'm doing it right now, we can adjust this third position right here, guys. And this changes the Z axis of what we're looking at. It's moving, this right here is, it's moving forward, and now it's moving backward, further away from us. So let's bring it down to about, I'd probably say, so the way that we see this right here, everybody, like if we're looking at the front, which is our active camera right now, the front, it's starting to zoom and pull away. That's where the smoke is starting to pull away. It's starting to get further from our camera that we've put in After Effects. That's why it's smaller from the front angle. Well, we want to go back a little bit further, probably to about, I think if you go to 800, yeah, 800 should be pretty good. Seems kind of small, but trust me, you guys are going to find out why we're doing this right now. You guys should bring also something that helps with the rest of the composition that we're going to do, is that we're going to basically make the rest of this. So we did the smoke right here as the background. Now the other thing that we need to implement as well and change is the ashes, okay? So the ashes in the beginning, if we go up here to ashes, the first ash that we have should be, click the drop down of transform, and then we'll go down to position, and then we can actually decrease that down. Notice how it's going further away and further and further. We can bring that all the way to maybe about 600. Or you can double click on this and then type in 600, just to be more accurate. So the particles composition in this little white layout we have right here is getting further away from the camera. That's why it's a little bit smaller. So everything that we see right here, guys, is that this white line is basically what we're allowed to see, or what we are seeing in our composition. Okay? The text is going to basically come in from the outside, and it's going to look really good. But the next thing that we're going to focus on is we're going to go up to the camera and we're going to tweak around and play with the positioning of it. So we have our ashes look okay. Let's click the drop down and let's go back up to camera. I'm just going to turn the audio off for those ashes assets. So if we click the drop down next to camera at the top and then we go to transform, we'll see position and then Z rotation. Okay. Also, something that's going to help us out is if we go all the way to the right here and go from 4 views back to 1. Okay? So guys, before we do any of that, we're going to go up here and correct the ashes again. The ashes are good because this third blue number value is Z, the Z axis, so it's like further away. That's at 600. We want to copy that. So I double clicked it and I pressed Command C on my keyboard, or Control C. And to get to ashes 2, just to basically simplify this process, guys, if we have something highlighted and we push P on our keyboard, we get the position keyframe, and the same goes for right here, that we're going to basically Command V, and copy and paste. Press enter or return on the keyboard to put that in right there. And once we have that, that's set. Do it's the same with ashes 3. Highlight it, click P on our keyboard. Then we have the position that we can adjust. Go to the third number and then make sure it's 600. So Command V, enter, and then voila. We can double click the background. So now everything in the background is like basically zoomed in, okay? Or it's zoomed out. We can increase the scale of it so that we don't see these black bars around what we're trying to see. And so once we have that, everybody, let's increase the scale up to probably about 153. So check this out. Ready? So here's what we do, guys. We're gonna click on the 4 things, 3, 4, 5 things. Yeah, the 4 things that I think we just clicked on. So ashes 3, ashes 2, ashes, and then smoke. Okay, so smoke. Let's start with smoke first. Let's go ahead and click S after we highlight smoke and click on that. If you press S on your keyboard, it adjusts the scale. And then go to the percentage at the very last one. And then as you increase that, guys, you'll get to see like, oh wait, now it's a full image. Okay, there we go. Yep, now that's the size that we want. And let's do the same thing with ashes. Click and highlight it, press S on the keyboard, and increase the ashes. Follow that white box right about there. And then do the same with ashes 2. Press S on the keyboard. Probably about 133%. The reason I say that is because this is 133%, so let's do the same for ashes 3 as well. S, 133. That works right there. Click these drop downs, clean up the space a little bit. Now everything should look pretty consistent so far. Still looks good. All right, now that we have that, what we're going to focus on doing next, guys, is adjusting the camera, okay? So the camera is right where we want it to be right about now. All right, this is where we want it to end. The camera's in a good spot, in a good position, okay? So let's go all the way to the end. If we drag our blue timeline marker and drag it all the way to the end of our project right here, then we're able to basically say this is where we want the camera to finish, okay? So the camera should finish at this point, and this is the last angle that we should see this at. So we're going to click on the drop down next to camera over here, or next to cam, and then when we have that, then we can start adjusting and tweaking and adding these keyframes, okay? So the very first keyframe that we want to do is going to be Z rotation, all right? Z rotation is on the Z axis, so it's pulling in, it's going out. We're activating that keyframe all the way back here on the bottom, and then I want to take my blue timeline marker, click at the top right here, and I want to drag this all the way to the beginning, and then I want it to start kind of crooked so it rotates everything. All right, so check this out. Now I'm going to go, once I take my blue timeline marker and bring it to the beginning, I'm going to go to this degree number that we see right here, and then I'm going to increase it by, let's get it to probably 30. That's 30 degrees. You can always double click and then type in 30 degrees. And check that out. We've basically rotated our composition, all right? Now that we've rotated it, we kind of want to correct this because we still don't want to see these black bars. And now a really cool tool that we can use for this, guys. All right, guys, so now that we have our keyframe for the Z rotation, everybody, there's a really cool tool that we're going to use that allows us to basically zoom in as much as we can. to the point where we want to hide these black. We'd like to hide these black like edges right here, since we've already rotated our camera to 30 degrees. So let's go up here to the top left, and then there's going to be a button that we see called Dolly Towards Cursor Tool. Okay. If we have this right here, if we click and hold this button, it should be next to Pan Under Cursor or one of these. It should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttons away from our selection tool. Okay. So if we click and hold this, then we should see Dolly to Cursor or Dolly Towards Cursor Tool. But basically we want to click to Dolly to Cursor Tool, and one thing that we want to do is that we want to click and highlight the middle and get to the middle of our composition. We want to click and hold with our left click on our mouse, and if we click and hold that and then zoom all the way in, then we can hide all that black that's on these corners right here. You want to make sure that the black right here disappears. There we go. Zoom in a little bit more. There we go. Now that's what we're talking about. So that's going to be the beginning, and then it's going to end at, it's going to zoom all the way back a little bit later, but we still have that rotation. The rotation looks good. And then another thing that we're going to do, guys, as well, is that we're going to take our position keyframe and we're going to take it all the way back here. So if we take our position keyframes, guys, the one that's on the Z axis, and then we change it, make sure that we activate, well, not activate the keyframe just yet, but at the very end, decrease it so that, bring it back, right about there. There we go. Just to kind of recenter it a little bit. All right, make sure that it's kind of centered in the middle right here. And then I like the position, I like where everything looks, guys. Let's go ahead and click this keyframe. Let's bring it back here. And then if we zoom a little bit in, back to where we were, to where it basically covers up those corners that I just talked about. Now we should be able to see it move and rotate just like that. Still lagging behind, still rendering a little bit. We do it just like that so it rotates more, but we can still go up here to this tool again and zoom essentially all the way in to where we don't have that text anymore. There we go. There we go. Now that's what we're talking about. There we go. I think everything looks okay. Looks a little bit better. There we go. Looks pretty cool. So when we add those different functions, guys, we add those different keyframes, it all looks pretty smooth and pretty awesome. Something that we can do as well to make sure that everything looks like pretty smooth, because we always like to do ease in and ease out, guys, is that if you click and hold with your selection tool right here, if you press V on the keyboard, and if you click and hold up in this top right corner, and we click and hold and we drag it, everything we highlighted in here, these little keyframes, these keyframes, we're going to basically smooth them out, and the way that you can do that is by pressing F9. Yep, you can press F9 by highlighting everything right here, by making sure it all smooths in, looks good. You can either right click and click Keyframe Assistant and then click Easy Ease, so it eases in and eases out. And the funny thing is that we're actually going to tweak the keyframe that we just made for the text, because it kind of comes together a little too soon. Okay, so let's basically sort of adjust it, the text, but since we smoothed out those keyframes and it's easy ease on this side and on that side, it all looks pretty solid and really good right now. The next thing that we want to add right about, let's click that drop down where camera is, and we want to go down to where basically we want to go down to YouTube and intro. So if you go to YouTube right here, guys, on the bottom left, go to our text, and we go to transform, those little keyframes and everything that we just did. Well, actually, if we go to, I think, text, yeah. There we go. Here's what we can do. When you guys get to this point, everybody, if you come down here, so if we click on YouTube, we click on the drop down of text, and then from text we go down to where it says animator. Animator right here, guys, animator 1. You'll take this and then you'll click animator 1, and then with that drop down, guys, tracking type and amount right here, we see 169. We can see these keyframes. This one starts right here and it ends right here, okay? So let's actually take this ending point and stretch it out a little bit more. Probably something maybe right there. Now the background text, YouTube 2, needs to follow it as well. Okay, so let's click on YouTube 2, text, animator 1, and let's line up this keyframe with this one as well. So now it's starting to come together a little bit smoother. Let's make it a little bit further apart. Let's line this up right about there. It's still coming together. Now that we have that, everybody. All right, guys, so I've just kind of brought the text to stretch it out a little bit. We adjusted these keyframes, this one right here, this one right here. I stretched them out because I want my text to start to come in a little bit later, or start moving, because when the beat hits right about, I want it to, whoop, there we go. I basically want a little bit less time for this to slowly come together. While this does look pretty decent, I'm going to take it up just a notch a little bit because I'd like to make it look as best as I can. So one thing that we're going to do is, number one, we're going to take the camera movement and we're going to change it to where it looks normal, like right before the beat's about to kick. So like right there. So that's when right about there is when the beat's about to kick, okay? So at this exact time, based on what I heard here. So I want everything to basically be uniform and look centered and nice already. So we're going to go here down to the bottom left. We're going to click on the cam layer that we've added, and we're going to bring these keyframes all the way right there. There we go, right about there. Down to the science. All right, now let's give it a shot. Still rendering. Still give it some time. See, doesn't that look pretty cool? A little bit cooler because it's a little bit quicker, but we'll be doing the same thing with intro as well. So I kind of want them to come together like right before, I want them to stop moving like right before they're about to right before it's about to stop. So there we go. To time it up exactly, I dragged my header right here to this exact frame that we have, and then we need to go down to YouTube and intro, okay? So the YouTube text, we already had that drop down. Let me just, up those up a little bit, but let me drop them down again just to show you guys what I'm looking at. You want to make sure you go to YouTube, and then you want to go to text. After text, you're going to go down to Animator, and you click the drop down of Animator 1. Again, through here, we're going to go down to where we see that keyframe is activated, where tracking amount is, where 11 is. That's the starting keyframe. Here's the ending keyframe. I want to match it to where the camera move stops, so let's take this ending keyframe and line it up with exactly, there we go, and line it up with what my text is doing. And I want to do the same with not only YouTube 2, but YouTube 1, the first YouTube. So text drop down after the YouTube drop down, and then go down to Animator 1 drop down, and then find that keyframe that we activated and bring that ending keyframe all the way back here. Right about there. There we go. Now that we have that, guys, we can actually check and see if it has rendered it, but it's nice and slow. It's moving right there, and then it gets still right there, and then and then I'll show you guys what I'm going to add in later. We're going to do the same exact thing with intro as we did with YouTube. So let's go down to, let's clear these guys up. Let's come down to intro. So intro 1, well, we can show the YouTube keyframes. So to get to this from this keyframe, you want to go right there. So we click on this little arrow next to the keyframe diamond over here on the bottom left-hand side, because I want intro to have the exact same keyframe. So we need to know the starting point, or the ending point, if you will, with how far away the letters are from each other. So from there, we're going to go back up and scroll up to intro, where we have our intro drop down. And then through there, we text drop down, animator drop down, and then we see that that ending keyframe it's not the same. So we have to move it a little bit ahead. Tracking amount. There we go. Let's have the tracking amount right about at 100. Okay. It's not at 100. Actually, bring it out to 248. Okay. So I clicked and held down with my mouse on this blue number that we have right here, bring it out to 248. And since this is intro 1, it's the one on top of intro 2. So let's go down to intro 2 and do the exact same thing. Intro 2, text, animator 1. All right, bring this keyframe over here. Tracking amount to 248. There we go. Let's see, what we did there is that we did basically the reverse. Let's set this one right here, guys, to 248, and let's set this one to 0. There we go. So this is 248 for intro 2. We set this keyframe. We're splitting them apart at 248, so that's a lot right here. Let's do 248. Why not drop down here? 248. Let's see how it all works out. That works. So YouTube 1, YouTube 2 look good. Now let's do intro 2. So we're going to click, hold, and highlight. And if you press F9, it should ease them out, but it's not going to. We're going to click and hold in this empty space and then highlight these two keyframes. And then we're going to right click both of them, go to Keyframe Assistant, and then click Easy Ease. Alright, now it's going to ease in and ease out of that one on intro 2. Let's go up to intro 1. We'll highlight and do the same thing with these keyframes. Right click, Easy Ease. Now let's see it all blend together. Yeah, it looks nice. Nice and synchronized, looks great. All right, so Now that we have that, it's still rendering it right now. Everything looks okay. We narrowed that down. We like the movement of the letters. It all flows. So it's still missing one thing. Well, it's still missing two things, but we'll import the other one. So I'm going to go ahead and import a lens flare that I have for you guys. So do that. Press Command I on my keyboard, and right here, flare.tga, that I'll have for all of you guys to use. We'll import that, and that will go underneath our camera but above our ashes. Okay, so from here, guys, this is a lens flare that we're going to be using, and it's pretty decent, but as you can kind of tell, it's like it has a black background. So now we have to think to ourselves, okay, how am I going to add this in? We can determine the size and the scale of this lens flare, but the size right about there is actually pretty decent. So here's what we're going to do, is that we're going to place our lens flare right here, and then to do the same thing that we did with the particles or the ash, we're going to right click the flare TGA that we have, go to blending mode right here, and then we're going to go to screen. And then boom, that adds our flare that's going to go across our screen here. Now we're going to have to keyframe the movement and the opacity of it so that it kind of pops up and then goes away. And I'm going to make it go from the left and to the right. So we're going to start it off at this point right here. Okay, when they come to a halt right there. All right, we'll have this little flare come in from the left, and then he's going to move across to the right, and that's going to look really nice and really poetic. So we'll take our flare. We will go ahead and basically, there we go. Sorry, I had to undo something. And then through here, guys, we're going to go down to, we're going to click the drop down from where the flare is. I kind of want it to start at this frame, and I want it to start at, so we're going to click the drop down where the flare is. We're going to click the drop down for transform, and we're going to keyframe, I think I want it to start right there, position and opacity. Alright, so from the left hand side, I'm going to basically take the opacity down to about 0 so you guys don't see it. And then as it goes across, I want it to move probably kind of want it to pop up over here on the right hand side. So now we're going to increase the opacity back to 100, and then we're going to go from this number to the left hand side next to position right here. This is Y, guys, but the one on the left is X, and we're going to drag it to the right. So something right about, you know, maybe there. So through here, I actually want this opacity to go back in, just to kind of pop up a little bit. And what that is that it's going to basically pop up right there, and then it's going to disappear to the right. And I have to go from 0% opacity at the first keyframe to 100% probably about midway, or we can probably key in a second one, if you will. And then we're just going to go back down to 0 at this exact keyframe, okay? So one way that we can basically do that is go all the way to the end at that exact keyframe, bring that opacity back down to 0, and then just subtly You get that little flare like that. And so, in order to achieve that, we're going to click and highlight all of these keyframes that we just made for our flare. Right click it, keyframe assist, and then easy ease. And let's check out and see how this goes. Might actually want to start it a little bit earlier. I want to start it right about there. So let's take this guy. Let's move all 4 of them. If we highlight all of these keyframes, we don't have to individually change them. So now it's going to render it a little bit. Love how it just slows down whenever it's trying to render. So you can tweak the opacity like that, guys, but it just kind of fades in and fades out to give it a more realistic kind of flare look, like it's just popping up. We can also play with the scale too. So at this exact time right here, we can take the scale, we can keyframe that, bring it down a little bit to maybe about 69%. And then we'll do the same where we go to the opacity. It's at like 100. We'll change this number to 100 on the bottom right. And then we'll go to this next keyframe and we'll change it back down to 70. Now as we do that, I'm going to click and drag and highlight these guys, keyframe assistant, and then we want to easy ease. That way everything looks good. That looks a lot better. And the next thing that we're going to add, guys, to this composition is I'm going to make this text shake a little bit, okay? That's another cool thing that I'll show you guys how to use. So in order to achieve this effect, guys, you're going to basically going to add like a specific type of effect but this is where we're going to be using more of keyframe assistant, guys. It's going to make keyframing a lot easier. And once we actually do that, we're going to go make sure that it's the text that we have of YouTube, YouTube 2, YouTube and intro right here. And in order to do that, you have to basically convert the audio to keyframes first, okay? In order to do that, we have to find our God level, our God level MP3 down here, and we have to right-click this, and then we have to go to Keyframe Assistant. Once we do that, guys, we're going to convert our audio to keyframes, okay? This is our song. This is the music that we're using. Now that we have that, it's basically going to convert everything to keyframes. I'll show you guys what it does if you click this drop down right here. Audio, click the other drop down, and then We can also see the waveform down here if you wanted to edit that too. But what it does is that it keeps track of all the differences that the music makes, and you guys can visualize that, I think, through no, it doesn't have any expressions yet, so we'll not worry about that right now. But once you convert it all to keyframes, it's basically going to add an audio amplitude layer, okay? So what it does, it adds this audio amplitude, and then you'll be able to see right about up top here, it just got added. It's basically kind of like a null object, but you'll see what this audio amplitude does, okay? So I'm going to drag this audio amplitude, I'm going to bring it down right above intro right here. And the audio amplitude, let me close this drop down, there we go. This audio amplitude comes with effects for it, okay? So if we click on audio amplitude in the bottom left, we click this drop down, effects, we'll see left channel and right channel in both channels. Now, unless you guys are actually like using like specific songs or anything that uses the left ear and the right ear, you can pretty much just get rid of these left and right channel because stereo is pretty standard. So you do that by clicking and highlighting it and then just pressing delete on your keyboard. And then once you click that, you'll click both channels. If you click the drop down, you'll see that there's keyframes already made for the slider. There is a literal keyframe for every single frame of this song for the entire duration of this intro, okay? So instead of like adding keyframes in there for you, it basically simplifies everything. Like it literally did that. It did all that work by adding the keyframes of every single second. Now, another cool way that you can actually see all of the changes that it makes is if you basically go to like the graph editor and you see the slider itself. So we have to click on the effect that keyframes it, so this slider right here, and then you go to the graph editor, then you actually see what this song does. It kicks with the bass drop right here. So it's nice and mellow, just kind of chill, and then right about here, that's when the kick happens and the bass drops. You do that by clicking the slider keyframe right here, and then you go to the graph editor, all right? But for other purposes, we're going to not really focus on that right now, but you'll see why this is important later to basically see the progression of the song itself. And you can see the amplitude that you guys have on there and see like how loud it gets, what you want to do with it. So to go back to the graph editor, guys, if you were to find, if you went right here and you guys wanted to see the difference that this actually makes, and you guys can zoom in a little bit using the plus key on your keyboard, you can find that there's these points on here that are specifically measured to tell you how high your volume gets and how low it gets. So if we make note of this, you guys can write it down if you want to. I probably would recommend it for this assignment, but if you write down 1408.10, whatever this value it gives you at the top, if you have a song with like a nice bass or whatever, if you want your text to react to it. So write 1408.10, and then the bottom one will write negative 768.49, all right? So 1408.10 and negative 768.49. Those are our values that we're going to write down. I'm just going to put it in my phone. All right, so that's our higher value and our lower value that we have as well. And here's where we get into like a little bit of a cooler part. So now that we have our slider there, we can visualize that. Something that we're going to make it a little bit easier. Let's exit graph editor and let's go down to YouTube. And if we click on YouTube right here, we'll click this drop down and everything should look okay right there. Transform. let's take the scale of this text, okay? Let's take the scale and we'll keyframe it, all right? So what happens when you do that is that if you guys want to basically make the text bounce to the beat of the music, you need to find the text that you're looking for. In this case, it's YouTube. And then for scale, you need to basically hold down Option on your keyboards if you're using Mac, or hold down Alt, A-L-T, on your keyboards, and then click the stopwatch that we see next to scale. What that is going to do is that's going to activate an expression, and that's going to let you program something that's very specific to your music, to your text, to your entire composition, okay? And then once you reach this point, you're going to click and hold this expression pick whip right here, and then you're going to drag it all the way up to audio amplitude. So it has to be attached to it, okay? So now if we take this little swirly thing right here, the expression pick whip, we drag this all the way to our audio amplitude layer and make sure that it goes to our slider effect, okay? Now it's attached to that. So you can actually see it dancing around in like a little yellow box. It actually kind of comes up right there, but that's the first layer of our YouTube text, okay? It's that small because it's basically saying, okay, you can be down to a 0 scale on the low tones, and then when it actually kicks with the bass, that's when it kicks all the way up to almost 100%. But we need to change our expression so that it actually follows and looks a little bit better than this. All right, now that we've activated this expression, guys, what we're going to do next is we're basically going to keep the size of our text the same at its 100% scale, so it's fully filled out. So what you want to do is that once you've added that here, you're going to click on it, highlight it, and then click to the next of temp, temp, temp right here. And then you're going to click space, and then you're going to click the plus symbol, and then you're going to click space again, and then you're going to create a little bracket. It should be underneath your minus and plus key. It's like a little bracket. It's not a parentheses. It kind of looks like it, but it is a bracket. And from there, you're going to type in 100, comma 100, and then you're going to click the little ending bracket, and then you've created like an official command right there. So now let's check out and see what it does. We can see that our YouTube text right here is a little bit separated, but that's because it's bumping. It's bumping to the music a little bit. So but it's just kind of dancing ever so slightly, you know? So it's attached to the scale of this slider that we have, but basically I don't want those keyframes to really kick in yet until it stops and the beat kind of kicks in. So in order to do that, let me go down here at the very bottom. You guys will see God level, which is my music. I'll go down to audio at the bottom, and you'll click waveform, and then you can actually see individually where that song kicks in, right about so right about it jumps right there. I want it to hit at that exact moment right here. Okay, so this exact frame where it kicks in, well, we can do it the frame right before. Let's see. So the frame right before the bass hits, I'm going to go up here. I'm going to find my slider from my audio amplitude. I'm going to delete these keyframes that are before it. Okay, so I'll click and hold and I'll drag all the way over to the right, and I'm just going to delete those keyframes because I only want it to take place when the music kicks in. So it looks a little something like that. But maybe I don't want it to get like too big. Maybe I wanted to bring it down just a little bit. So the way that we would correct that is that it's kind of cranking up right there. Let's bring it down just a little bit to probably 60. We'll make an expression there, don't worry. We'll keep the scale, we'll keep this for the YouTube text at the 100%, but we'll bring down the intensity of the audio amplitude. The way that we'll do this is by also in order to make sure that our text stays like kind of 3D, we need to do the same thing that we did with YouTube 1 to YouTube 2, okay? So I'm going to make sure that we click that drop down there, YouTube 2, and then for transform, we're going to see scale. We're going to hold down Option or Alt on our Microsoft computers, Option on our Macs, click the keyframe, transform scale, and then underneath there we're going to click the pick whip and we're going to drag it all the way up to the top of our list to audio amplitude and then to our slider. Then it's going to create that right there. And then we're going to click enter. And it should say something like temp. There we go. Alright, so now it's not detecting it for some reason. Okay. So let's take our pick whip and take it to the scale of YouTube instead. That's much better. Alright, now that we have this. There we go. It's attached to it. So, once we have this, guys, instead of taking our pick whip and taking it to the audio amplitude for YouTube 2, we took our pick whip and we attached it to the scale of the first YouTube text that we see. So now it's following the rest of our YouTube text and bouncing up and down with it. Looks pretty cool. There we go. And we're going to apply the same principle to intro. Alright, so YouTube 2, YouTube 1. Let's go down to intro. And intro is going to be for transform right here. We'll have scale. And go down to scale. We'll click and highlight on that. Remember Option or Alt, and then click the keyframe stopwatch right here. And then we're going to click and hold our pick whip all the way up to our audio amplitude slider. There we go, temp, and then space, plus, bracket, 100, comma, 100, end bracket, enter, and there we go. And that's intro 1. And now we need to go down to intro 2. Click this drop down, go down to transform, click scale, option, hold, click the keyframe, hold and click the pick whip, bring it up to intro 1, and go to our scale right here. There it is. And everything should be rendered with each other. Yep, it's all bumping. Still rendering. go. Now I'm going to decrease this a little bit, make it look a little bit cleaner. And I'm going to clean up these drop downs. And here we go. There we go. Now let's go up to audio amplitude. Click that drop down here. For the slider, we're going to basically take what we did with our keyframe, and we're going to hold down Option, click the stopwatch. And now we are going to program our we're basically going to program like what we see on this expression to clean up the jitteriness of the bumps a little bit. So from there we'll click and highlight it, and we're going to click ease, and then that's going to be an option that we can click on right here. But for ease, if we do parentheses like this, for example, now we're going to state basically the values that we need. All right, I'm going to click on it again. Let's do value space 0, comma 0, comma 0, comma 0. And once we have that, you're going to click the ending parentheses. It should be all right. And how we're going to arrange this, guys, is that you basically need to take the numbers that we used, and you need to adjust like what we saw earlier to how the text is going to react up and down. So these first two numbers are those numbers that I told you to write down when we looked at the amplitude and the noise of our song, and I wrote those numbers down. Those numbers were, the lower one was negative 786.49, just to be exact. And the second number, or the high number, was 1408.10. And then we can do a 0 to a 100 effect. So the first two were the numbers that you guys recorded, and the last two were the 0, which is the impact of the jump of the effect, and that's the lower limit, and then the 100 is the, oh, I want it to kick in like this. So now that we have that, let's click enter, and let's check it out. Still very sensitive. Now the thing is that if I want to take that lower value away, that's probably going to help clean this up a little bit, okay, because it's reacting to like those really low hums, the drops. And let's actually go back down. We're going to go down here, guys, to well, to there. We can actually click the graph editor, and if we click on slider, this is where we're going to see those limits, okay? So if we click on slider and then we click on the graph editor, now we're able to see what we're talking about here, okay? Instead of going all the way down to negative 786, let's hover in the middle here, and let's just say that looks like number looks like what? Negative 56, 64. Hovers kind of in the middle here. Positive 68 or 63. Positive 42. Positive 42. Positive 64. Positive 20. Let's just do 20. Let's not go anywhere in the negative spot. So through there, let's actually go down a little bit. I zoomed in to get this look with the plus button on my keyboard. And instead of doing negative 786, let's delete that and change it to 20. Just to pick like a really good, oh, at the end here. Just to pick like a good number. So make sure that you guys go to the end and then press enter before you're about to start anything else. There we go. Just that one expression. And now let's review it. Zoom out a little bit. Alright guys, so basically some of the alterations or the changes that I made were on this audio amplitude, guys, this audio amplitude layer right here. I started the keyframe right down here where the beat would kick in, and I started at the frame before. So if we zoomed all the way in right there, this exact frame on my song starts, the keyframe starts right before it's about to kick. So we get that jump. It's nice and smooth and flat, and then we get that jump right here. And I changed the values on my expression right here to 1400 to 1500 and then 0 to 25. It didn't really have that much of an effect on it. The reason why is because it's really mostly sensitive and it's detecting everything that goes with the music, but I figured if I change the upper limit to 1500 and then the lower limit to 1400, the effect only happens when you reach that high, that big bass note. And I only wanted the effect to be about from 0 to 25, and I wanted it to be minimal, but I guess it's the bass is so powerful that it creates this effect and it wiggles. So just to do a recap. I think it looks pretty cool. It looks pretty good. So so we'll re-watch it one more time. Text comes in. Flare. So yeah, looks pretty good to me. Now we have all of these layers on here, guys. This is probably our most complex composition we've ever made, but it looks good. Hopefully our projects come out something similar to this. So file on the top left, export, and then add to render queue. Once we add to our render queue, guys, we're going to go down here to output to, which is the blue lettering that we see right here, not yet specified. We got to choose where we're going to send it and deliver it to once it's done rendering. And then I'm going to go ahead and deliver it to my drive right here, to class tutorials. That's where I want it to be. It's a QuickTime movie because that's how After Effects works. It's called YouTube intro. Let's go ahead and save that. And then once we have that saved, then we make sure that it's the best quality, the best settings, the high quality, and let's go to render. And then it should process everything, and it should be done here in a little bit. All right, and now that we hear the big beep, let's check and see that it exported where it needed to. I'm going to minimize this, go down here, let's go down the bottom of my taskbar, open up Finder. Once we have that there, I'm going to go to my drive. It should be in class tutorials where I had it. And then right about here, YouTubeintro.mov. All right, let's bring this up and let's check it out. All right, and that concludes it.